Everybody, we'd like to start off the talk this morning before I introduce our speaker today with a short video on sort of the future of municipal solid waste and where it's all going to end up. This is going to be from a plant processing facility in Connecticut, and it's sort of where we're trying to head with solid waste. It's about 4 minutes.
Welcome to the new residential single-stream recycling center, one of the most state-of-the-art facilities of its kind operating in the country today. The new facility handles over 350 tons of recyclable materials every day. That's nearly 700,000 pounds of materials from 17.
Just kidding.
That's a good facility, but this one's better.
Day, is it a plastic day, is it a metal day? We all know the benefits of recycling, but confusion in the rules and what's accepted by the municipalities has resulted in an underwhelming level of compliance. To see if there's a better way, on Earth Day I attended a facility in Connecticut that's making it easier to be green. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go.
Today we have an Earth Day celebration commissioning our new facility here in Shelton, Connecticut, and we're unveiling our single stream processing facility, which is the highest evolution of the equipment, and it's capable of processing up to 35 tons per hour of single stream recycling.
You want to get over the big plastics, these big bulky items, anything that's big that you don't want to get into the rest of the system.
This facility is currently servicing 25 municipalities here regionally. We have the capacity at this facility to easily service another 25.
Now the big green machine that's behind me, it needed to make its way to this portion of Connecticut. If we're going to reach our now target of 42% of recyclables from the garbage stream. Now that by the way is not a terribly high number. It's high in comparison to where we are today. But this machine behind me is capable of 95% sort, and that's a very significant percentage.
Of the materials that we receive, we recycle 95% of. There's always going to be some, commodities of people inadvertently they throw a pair of shoes in there because they think it's recyclable. Watch shows like Gold Rush Alaska, and guys commit a lot of resources to go into an extreme area and recover products, and here we're mining urban ore right now.
This is a state-of-the-art facility you see behind me. It'll employ about 50 people working up on this line, but the whole organization employs over 250, so Joe's all about creating jobs and using green technology to do that. The more we recycle, the more jobs we create. And look, this is all about putting people back to work as much as it's about having a healthy environment. So when you marry those two things up, everybody wins in this kind of situation. So we're exciting, but I think when you see facilities like this in the big picture, you're going to see people from other states coming here to see how we do it.
For us to come up with 15.
So that was our trailer for the talk this morning. With that, and looking forward, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Michael E. White. He's enjoyed a long relationship with Stony Brook University, starting in the 1970s with undergraduate and then graduate research here at the Marine MSRC. He's worked as a research scientist and currently works as adjunct faculty in both the Sustainabilities and at SoMAS, teaching environmental law and environmental management classes. He sits on the Dean Council for SoMAS and on the Board of Governors for New York State Sea Grant. He's currently a practicing attorney representing several companies that deal in municipal solid waste every day. And the reason for his talk this morning is no matter what research any of us do out here at SoMAS and the Sustainabilities or whatever program you might be in, everybody creates trash, everybody has trash. And so the real question is, on Long Island in particular, we have a unique trash situation. The question is, where does it go? Where does it end up? Does it get burned? Does it get put into a landfill? So with that being said, I'd like to welcome Michael E. White, Esquire, seminar speaker for this morning.
Thank you, Michael. It's truly an honor. I'm so proud of Mike. But look, before I get started, I want to go back to that video. The reason I wanted you to see a little bit about that, and you see the people, there was a fellow named Joe Winters Brothers Waste Systems in Connecticut. You can hear a little while later in the talk, we've formed a partnership with Winters Brothers, and we're basically building one of these single stream facilities right here in the town of Brookhaven. And within the next 2 years, we're going to be building another one of those in Nassau County. And some of the things that they said about the importance of single stream recycling, I will further emphasize today. But it is truly the wave of the future. And as Billy Brennan said, who's one of our technical advisors on our 2 projects down here, it is truly mining ore out of municipal solid waste. There is money in the garbage. So, as Mike said, I have a long history with the university, and I'm extremely proud to be here. I enjoy teaching my classes, and I enjoy working with SoMAS, with the sustainability program, and certainly with the dean. Thank you, Ming-Hua, for coming over today. So, let's get to this riddle first. What do we make every day, give away, but never really goes away? So, the answer's pretty easy, right? Garbage. And so what I want to unfold a little bit about that riddle is, yeah, everybody makes garbage every day. We give it away, and frankly, we hope every day somebody takes it away, right? Otherwise, it's going to gather up on the street or in the pail outside or in the dumpster out front. And so what we're going to talk about today is, where does it go, but does it really go away? And so when you look at municipal solid waste, and we're going to describe what that is, it sort of doesn't really go away because it probably winds up in a landfill somewhere where where it will be rotting for hundreds or thousands of years. Or it could go to a waste to energy facility where it will be mass burned and created energy, but we still get an ash residue, and that's about 20% by weight, and guess where that's going? Into some landfill somewhere that's going to stay there for the eons of time. We can recycle material, so this is the plus side that it doesn't really go away, because when we recycle those marketable commodities out of those recyclables, we're hoping, and that's what our mission is, to make new products out of the ore that we're recycling out of those recyclables. So it doesn't go away because it gets put somewhere and stays there forever. Or the plus side that it doesn't go away is that we can reuse and recycle it. Question also is, where does your garbage go? Just raise your hands quickly. Do you know where your garbage goes? Ooh, very good. Oh, I see, very educated, right, okay. So generally, I'm going to talk a little bit about where your garbage goes. If I don't cover your area or you, particularly in the talk, we can talk later and I'll give you the very specifics, because with respect to this issue, Long Island is truly unique. But let's talk about the university first, because everybody spends a lot of time here at the university. So, first with respect to solid waste, I'm not going to talk about the regulated and hazardous waste. I'm going to hope that somebody else at the university is handling all that problem and it gets to the right place and it's treated in the right way. But I'm going to talk about the garbage. So, great picture we have of the front loader truck, Jet Sanitation. That's a company that I am, one of the companies that I'm affiliated with. You see the Jet dumpster every day in your parking lot, okay? That's the kind of truck that's going to come and pick up that dumpster, and that's garbage in that dumpster. But then we have the other issues related to what we're really concerned about in terms of making the difference going forward, and that's these recycling containers. So, where does this garbage go in that dumpster? Goes to a transfer station. To the extent that there were any recyclables in it, like big pieces of cardboard, those are extracted, and ultimately the actual just waste in that dumpster is going to go to probably, more likely than not, a landfill in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, or West Virginia, possibly upstate. And I'll explain why that is on Long Island. Some of it could go to a waste energy facility, but for the most part, the waste energy facilities we have on Long Island are serving residential waste. The recyclables. Okay, so you see those different containers, like those 3-part containers that I go down the hall, and I brought in one of the big ones here to make an example of this. So this says paper on it. Here, this is bottles and cans, paper, and waste. What we're going to talk about in terms of single stream recycling later, which was the subject of the video, is we can just have one container and you can put all the recyclables in that one container. In fact, in most of America, okay, where they're in the 21st century, okay, communities, suburban communities have 2 containers that just look like this. Okay, one they put garbage in, and the other one they put recyclables in. And in the really sophisticated towns and villages around the country, they have an automated truck that comes by and lifts the container and puts it in the back of the truck. Okay, we still have 2 or 3 men on the back of the truck lifting cans every day. So I give that to you as an example. And know where your garbage goes, okay, and that you can make a difference with it. So what are we talking about in terms of amount of solid waste? Okay, I'll give you some breakdown. So these are some Long Island statistics, and I want to have a call out right away for some of the great work that the Waste Reduction and Management Institute here at SoMAS does. I work closely with Larry. I'll talk a little bit about later about a new opportunity that we're hoping to get together on. So that gives you some idea that generally on the collection side, it's more residential waste than commercial. And it's very different collection mechanisms. For the most part, residential is collected by local governments. Commercial collection, except for the town of Babylon, very unique circumstance, I'll hopefully get to explain later. Commercial enterprise, like my company, Jet Sanitation, who picks up those dumpsters out there. From a residential standpoint, just the municipal solid waste, no, not recyclables, it's about 1.8 million tons per year on Long Island. And when I talk about Long Island here, I'm talking about Nassau and Suffolk, although we're geographically connected to 2 wonderful boroughs of the city. Long Island and Nassau County are quite unique than what the city, although the city of New York, by the way, has no waste facilities. They're trucking and training all of their waste to landfills out west, and actually we compete for them for space. Okay, recyclables, about 500,000 tons per year. From a disposal side, because as I mentioned earlier, the waste to energy facilities are primarily for residential because they've been constructed with partnerships with local government. About 60% of the residential waste is going to one of those waste to energy facilities. I'll talk a little bit how they operate later. About 70% still going to off-island landfills. So 2 very large towns in Nassau County, North Hempstead and Oyster Bay, every residential home that's picked up there goes to a transfer station with the municipality collects it, goes to a transfer station, gets loaded 100-yard trucks and driven upstate New York. Okay, so think about the carbon footprint of that. And while the ranges vary, we're talking about a 23% recycling effort on that residential waste. You heard the governor of Connecticut, okay, he's looking for a 40%. We're hoping when we build this facility in Brookhaven and we build this facility in Nassau County, in fact, the one in Brookhaven, which is scheduled to open by Earth Day, we're going to go with that same Earth Day theme, this Earth Day, and hopefully we'll have Governor Cuomo down here saying, cut the ribbon, we're going to now get 40%, at least in the town of Brookhaven. Okay, I can't help myself because I'm the lawyer governance piece, and anybody who's taken my classes knows they're going to get more of a background on this. So I want to talk about sort of 4 different elements of this. One, the legal framework and governance, and there is a difference, there's laws and regulations, but the governance is who's actually in charge, whose responsibility is it, and who's doing it. The environmental issues related to solid waste, the economics, and then the practical realities, some of which I've already been talking about in terms of what we do, what we don't do, or who does it and who doesn't do it. Basic legal framework, and I'm not going to bore you with this, take my environmental law class or even my environmental management class. Resource Conservation and Recovery Act is the federal statute, although for the most part it doesn't apply here in New York because we're delegated to handle our waste issues under the New York State Environmental Conservation Law. There's also sections of the General Municipal Law, specifically with respect to recycling. There's a statute in the General Municipal Law that requires local governments to create source-separated recyclables. Hopefully that's going to also mean single-stream recyclables. And then we have the regulations that come out of those statutes. That really is where the implementation takes forward. Permitting mechanisms, solid waste facilities and solid waste conduct is regulated by permits. You need permits to haul waste, you need permits to process waste. okay? And then there's the famous guidelines and policies, where agencies, like in New York, where the Department of Environmental Conservation is the agency in charge, they do a lot through guidance and policy documents and not just regulations. So, something unique to Long Island, the Long Island landfill law. I said earlier, okay, we don't have any landfills for garbage on Long Island. Smartly, we don't. Because for decades and generations we did, and we found out that they polluted our groundwater, which is our drinking water. So long about 1983, the state of New York passed a law that says no more landfills on Long Island. Of course, that created sort of this crisis of, well, okay, then what are we going to do with the garbage? And that's when we started to build for municipalities these waste and energy facilities, and also then created this trucking of waste off of Long Island. Part 360 regulations with respect to facilities, Part 364 regulations with respect to transport, and then two very interesting and unique policies with respect to solid waste / garbage in New York State. One is this environmental monitor policy, very interesting from a governance standpoint and an economic standpoint. If you own and operate a environmental facility for solid waste on Long Island, you pay the state of New York to pay its employee to come and monitor you, okay? And you have to do that every year. You're paying that employee to come and watch over you. The idea of that is that they're supposed to be assisting in terms of compliance, so we're all on the same page to get the job done right. It becomes a little dicey when they become enforcers as well. Record of compliance policy, bad actors, okay? So I have this picture of a man named Salvatore Avellino. No present disrespect to Mr. Avellino, but if you look in the history of waste management, no surprise, it's been an industry that's got a lot of scrutiny with respect to issues related to organized crime. Mr. Avellino is a convicted felon. He, in anybody's book, was a reputed member of organized crime and very, very involved in solid waste on Long Island. And so as a result of all of that activity to rid the industry of these bad actors, the state of New York actually has a policy that says you cannot get a permit to be in the waste business unless your record of compliance shows that you're more likely than not to comply with the law and the regulations, and you're not a bad actor. In other words, you have not been convicted of a felony for doing bad things related to the solid waste industry. Interesting, just a personal history. So I had my first experience connected to solid waste in like the mid-'80s, where I became the commissioner of the Department of Environmental Control in the town of Huntington, because indeed the people who were in charge in the commissioner, as the commissioner and deputy commissioners, were indicted for some activities related to activities and Sal Avellino. So I became the commissioner, and overnight I was in charge of solid waste facilities and the entire permitting business and so forth. And the industry is very, very different than it was years ago, but still in today's world. In the late 90s, early 2000s, when the town of Babylon created a special district and put basically 18 carting companies out of business, I represented the company, and I was part of the company that won the bid. Okay, so you can see that a lot of people that were unhappy about that. Similarly, 2 years ago, we bid the Babylon residential collection. The entire town of Babylon is one company. We were second bidder, but the first bidder got indicted. So guess what? In 30 days, we got the call from the supervisor of the town, said, can you do this? And within less than 2 months, we put 75 people employed and 35 trucks on the road to do that. So it's an interesting industry. Okay, back to some information other than that aspect of it, although that's going to be part of my book. Okay. Components of municipal solid waste. Again, these are some general numbers. These also come from some information from the Waste Institute, from DEC, from some not-for-profits, some of our own information. These numbers clearly will change depending on a snapshot of where you are, who you are, and when, and even time of the year. But generally you can see is that paper, huge amounts of paper in municipal solid waste, in the waste stream. Organics, the organics are everything from food scraps to tree debris to leaf and yard waste and grass. Plastics, large amount of plastic, and then the smaller fractions, okay? Some of which turn up in recyclables, and some of which are just in flat-out demolition debris. Miscellaneous is things like tires, some contaminated wood, and so forth, but that gives you some idea of what's in that waste that's going through the system that we're looking to deal with. Okay, so I kind of divided the different categories here. What I call MSW, municipal solid waste, and this is a state-of-the-art term from legal and governance, okay? This most importantly contains those putrescibles, rotting garbage, rotting food waste, okay? We cannot landfill that on Long Island, right? However, on the recyclables, the fiber, which is the paper and cardboard, commingled containers, plastic, metals, and glass containers, okay, that's what you even put into these containers out front. E-waste, which I see you have an enormous volume of e-waste down at the end of the building over here. Wonderful thing, because that's an important piece of recycling. Precious metals in that e-waste. Other metals, yard waste, to the extent that yard waste can be recycled to make mulch products, soil amendment products. Then the other levels of the forms of the waste stream, kind of like more in that miscellaneous category that I showed in the pie chart. The construction and demolition debris, wood, some clean wood can be used in the mulching process, although we're still working with the regulators to do that in the right way, so we're not creating any environmental or health issues. And then there's the bulky waste, the mattresses, the couches, and then part of that is the white goods, refrigerators, dishwashers, okay? Some of that can be recycled, most of it just becomes stuff, you have to get rid of it. Tires, there are many efforts in the past to recycle tires, some of that's happening, not very much. Okay, from a governance standpoint, state mandated plans, so inside the regulations, there are mandates as to you have to have planning, you have to have an analysis of how you're going to recycle to meet state goals, who's going to recycle, who's going to do it for you, who's responsible. But the other governance piece that I specifically wanted to get through, and I've kind of been mentioning this a couple of times already, is this local government. So while we have state mandates, classic, right? State mandates telling local government what to do. Don't send money, but solve the problem. Local governments, towns, and villages, okay? And it's the towns and villages who, for the most part, at least on Long Island, and again, this varies somewhat around the state, not too much, somewhat also around the country, but from the Long Island perspective, where you are today, where you're gonna, many of you probably come from, towns and villages handle this responsibility. They've determined, okay, what can be recycled, how it's going to be recycled, who's picking up the waste, where it's going to go, how it's ultimately going to be disposed of, okay? But the important part of that governance piece is that this does not happen. Local governments cannot do this, do not do this, without this reliance on industry. So we have industry saying, so for here, this is another one of our companies, the Recycling of Babylon. That is the largest recycling facility on Long Island. It's privately operated. Actually, it's still owned. The land is still owned by the town of Babylon. And so it's a private facility. It's a merchant facility. So Omni can take in waste and recyclables from almost anywhere, but primarily it serves the town of Babylon, okay? The town of Babylon wouldn't have these programs unless it had that facility. And so the way towns and villages do this, they put out a bid and say, hey, we have all the recyclables, or we have this excess trash, or we have yard waste, or we have construction and demolition debris. Can you help us build this? And you know, the idea there is that industry can be innovative and usually a lot more cost effective than just the government. But the point of that story is that there's a reliance on industry, but there's clearly a public-private partnership going on. In fact, we also see public-public partnerships where a town like Babylon may build something and then go to the next town and say, hey, you don't have to build one of those because we had this vendor build this and they can take your recyclables too, okay? So there's a number of different intermunicipal agreements that take place. As example, in the Brookhaven facility that I talked about, so we're building that single stream facility and it will have the potential to serve Smithtown, Islip, and all the East End towns if they so choose to get into that single stream. And the difference there, just because I can't help myself because I just love this concept so much, is that from the public-private partnership, and we'll get to economics, on the economics, it takes the municipal burden of costs. And so on single stream recycling, we're paying the municipality for the materials. They're not paying us to get rid of it or to process it. That's how fascinating and how futuristic really is. And by the way, I say futuristic for Long Island, Other places around the country have been doing this for a little while. Okay, from an environmental standpoint, this goes along with the ideas of solid waste planning that's in the state plans and in local plans. We certainly want to reduce, okay? We want to reduce waste. We want to, work to preserve our natural resources. Not going so well, because you ever buy anything at a store and there's full layers of plastic on it, and paper and cardboard, okay? So not going too well. A lot of work to be done there. Reuse and recycle. This is clearly happening, and it is the future. So on fiber, we can collect this is cardboard from commercial cardboard loads from Walmarts, from Costco's, from shopping malls, okay? That's mostly what's in the trash from those locations. It's that kind of cardboard. These are, we'll just stay with the fiber for a second. So what do we do with the fiber? We can make new fiber, recycled paper. We can take fiber and make building products, building materials out of it. Plastics, okay? These are some bales. This is actually the back of the Babylon facility waiting to get shipped out, but of course it snowed really bad this week. And so those are mixed plastic bales. They'll have PET and HDPE, and those will get shipped out. And in fact, what happens is new plastic materials are going to be made out of those. On the glass, fascinating story on glass. So this is kind of the dirty little secret about recycling. Your glass really does not get recycled because there's no markets for it, okay? The only market for some of the glass is if you really clean the glass and separate by clear and color, you can refurnish the glass. It's a very energy intensive process, okay? And so basically, the glass on Long Island, we have a beneficial use determination, and it's used as a supplemental landfill cover, because where there are landfills, they cover it every day, they cover the garbage every day, and so we basically have a grade of spec glass that we can use that. What are we looking to do? And again, I'm always looking to the future. This is something I'm working with SoMAS, with the Sustainabilities Program, and with engineering. We're hoping to work real hard and possibly get some National Science Foundation money to take a closer look at this problem. There's been some research around the country, but the bottom line is we got to get more research and get it to the finish line. Some ideas we have on glass. It can be a construction material. It can be replacing pea gravel as an example for drainage, okay? Our new idea, and this is, Larry and I have been batting this around for a while, Larry Swanson. So the state's and the federal government's gonna invest in this fortune for rebuilding the dunes and Long Island and creating more resiliency on the shore, okay? What do? They get sand, they dredge the sand from offshore. One idea is we could make glass into glass sand. We have processes that can clean the glass and make it look like sand. And so while you may not want to make a surface beach out of that, you may be able to use it to shore up the underneath part of that system. And of course, wood, mulch, soil amendment, clearly a recyclable material. Economics, I've kind of been talking about this a little bit already, okay? Limited natural resources, right? Finite resources on the planet. So clearly, we want to look at the cost benefit of using less natural resources and using more of this commodities that are in the waste stream and making new commodities out of them. From the economic side, also local budgets. So at least here on Long Island, which place I know very, very well, besides perhaps just pure labor costs, overall operating government, and certainly this year snow removal and road repair, solid waste costs are the largest cost to local government, because we don't have landfills. They've had to build waste to energy facilities, or they're going to truck it 3 states away every day with 25 tons of garbage on a truck. Okay, so that cost is a huge cost. On the other hand, we have some municipalities on Long Island who've turned that the other way. Town of Brookhaven, as an example, this town would be Brook, but for the fact that it has a construction and demolition debris landfill and an ash fill, where ash from the waste energy facilities come. And so they're making tens of millions of dollars every year on that. Also, from the waste recycling point, from the private industry standpoint, that's what I do every day, okay? These are commodities. Garbage itself is a commodity because we're transporting it and we're paying a landfill or waste energy facility to take it. These recyclables that we talked about are a commodity. There's a lot, There's a lot of money to be made, but an enormous investment that's taken to try to do that. So it's still, a lot of uncertainty, but people like the people I work with, like Joe Winters, who you saw, and the other partners that we have on the single stream are willing to do that. And we create jobs. Just the companies I work for on Long Island alone, which are companies themselves are probably worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're still privately held companies. Our biggest competitors are the multinational companies, and they're probably worth billions of dollars. But we probably on a regular basis employ some 800 people just in this waste industry. So a lot of jobs. Give you some idea of what I'm talking about in terms of the economics. The recycling commodities. I'm not going to go through each one of those, but you give an idea. Your news and cardboard, which is a big part of this waste stream, the more we can recover of the newspaper and the cardboard. These are some average pricing ranges that we worked out from the last 2 years or so. $85 of news, $125 a ton on cardboard. Clearly the big spike here, aluminum, okay? Best day ever is those aluminum cans turn up in our recycling facilities. And you say, well, how does that happen? Don't people bring them back to the nickels? No. That's okay, because at $1,400 a ton, we'll take them every day, right? But you can see here also the metal cans out of the tin, the plastic, which is the PET, and the HDPE natural and colored, okay? Scrap metal, and of course, this is like a plastic grade of like children's furniture, toys, and so forth, okay? Those are very, very difficult to handle. But the point of this as I'm going forward on the single stream is, if you can capture more of this, which we will, you're really on the potential plus side. So that's the idea where we could say to a municipality, we will pay you for that material because we're going to create technology to pull more of that out. Practical realities. Again, I've been talking a little bit about this along the way. Commercial institutional collection, total private enterprise on Long Island, except for the town of Babylon, who has entered the marketplace and they collect commercial trash. A little bit in a couple other towns. Residential, for the most part, municipalities collect residential. They hire private companies to do it, but they're in charge. They're billing people on what to do. Solid waste management facilities, sort of that combination of the public-private partnership, more private than public, so that reliance on the industry is clearly important to recognize. Where does the garbage go? Garbage goes where garbage goes cheapest. If you take nothing away from today, this is the mantra of this industry. Garbage goes where garbage goes cheapest. So, waste energy facilities, the resource recovery facilities, that's where a lot of this residential waste goes. It's not cheap. But the municipality decided after the landfill law was closed, they had to have a place. So they built these facilities at $200 million, $300 million, $400 million to build these facilities. But then they had to create up a way to pay for it. They had to go and A, capture all the residential waste, or in some towns on Long Island, like Babylon, North Hempstead, and Hempstead, they have flow control legislation that says even to the commercial waste stream, you have to bring your waste to us, because that's the only way they can guarantee a payment source to pay for those facilities. However, there's not enough waste energy capacity on Long Island. That may change someday or not. We talked a little bit at the end on hopefully some new technologies. What we have on Long Island is a lot of off-island trucking. Trucking every day that goes to States Point West. We have a little bit of rail. There's 2 small rail facilities. I'm going to tell you right now, that's we've probably invested and invented a new business company each year along the way. That's my next company. Rail. Less trucks are coming off less trucks are coming onto Long Island, okay? So we need to create a new way to get materials off of Long Island.
Of that stuff that goes off Long Island, does any of it end up being recycled someplace else, or is it all going into landfill because of the cost of getting it off the island?
Great question. So for the most part, by the time it gets on a truck that it's leaving Long Island, here, everybody's doing everything possible, because at a cost per ton of what that is, you don't want to be shipping stuff you could have saved. And however, from a cost standpoint, typical waste energy facility for a municipality is probably $110 a ton to burn that waste. Even though they receive revenues back, they also have to pay for the ash. We can probably ship garbage off Long Island for half that. Interesting. Okay, but let's look at environmental issues connected with these facilities. Covanta Energy Plant, this is the largest waste energy facility on Long Island. It's privately owned and operated by Covanta. It's on land that's owned by the town of Hempstead. You've probably seen it in the news lately. They've been now under a lot of new scrutiny for some of emission issues coming out of the stack. So this mass burn waste energy technology is already 25 to 30 years old. Still the workhorse for the industry. An enormous amount of waste moves through there. I mentioned the Brookhaven Landfill, Asheville. This is a great picture of that. So, excuse me, so they're still taking construction and demolition debris and ash. So the Brookhaven Ash Landfill takes ash from this plant, and the town of Brookhaven, who doesn't have a landfill to landfill its garbage, brings garbage to this facility. So you have trucks going back and forth along from Hempstead to Brookhaven and Brookhaven to Hempstead. Superstorm Sandy. So I wanted to just give you this sort of extreme case. Of course, Superstorm Sandy was an extreme case for everything, okay? Devastation, people still suffering from this, okay? But what did we see? A lesson learned, but a lesson not corrected yet. Extreme weather event, severe lack of transfer and transport capacity, disposal capacity, okay? We had more garbage and trash and debris than could literally be picked up on the streets, because in most places around the country, if you're not on Long Island, there's a landfill somewhere within probably the 20-mile range, okay? On Long Island, as I just described to you, if I can't feed it into a waste-to-energy facility, and you can imagine, under these circumstances, they were trying to stuff everything they could into those waste-energy facilities, because that was on-island disposal capacity, stuff that probably should not have been burned, okay? Another option that the town of Brookhaven and the state DEC came up with was open burn containers. Now we put this little picture to give you the small view. Okay, so this is not allowed in New York State. This is open burning. Okay, but think of this the size of a tractor-trailer truck burning waste openly with ash and flames coming out of it. Okay, because Brookhaven cannot landfill garbage, they set up these open containers to burn it. It had no place to go, and still the trucks getting into the facility were 2 miles lined up for days. There were truck drivers sitting there for days. We barged a lot of waste out, interestingly, okay? That had been tried in the middle 80s, didn't go too well. The barge got loaded with garbage, floated around for weeks, finally came back. But so I remember, so I will tell you, during this event, and I'm gonna show you a picture really soon, I worked every single day with towns and villages and the state DEC. Every afternoon, every morning, midday was a call. Who's got space? Who's got trucks? Where's it gonna go today? Okay? And we pushed and reinvented the barge option. Okay? Additional rail options would have been a good thing to have. So I told you, I think that's part of the future. But in emergency circumstances, think of this also. It's America, it's capitalistic. When I need them in an emergency, it's gonna cost a lot of money. If I had that kind of infrastructure set up already, it would be part of the routine. So, a couple of great pictures, unfortunate pictures, okay? This is a picture in the town of Babylon, okay? I'm probably behind this truck somewhere. This payload may actually be driven by the president of the company that we work with in Babylon. One of the companies that, because we have the Omni Babylon facility, we also have a trucking company. So when this happened, basically the supervisor calls up and said, get equipment, get somebody. So the devastation is clearly visible, and we were down here for days. In fact, a couple of days, Mike even came down with me to see. We couldn't pick this up fast enough, okay, because there was no place to put it. It wound up being started to store in parking lots along parks, okay? The most fascinating part of this was, you know, when we first went down these streets, just like the day after, people were just so happy that somebody was coming, and they were able to actually get out of their homes. This is, as you work closer to Great South Bay, literally there were homes on the street, okay? So this is a fascinating example. This is Jacob Reese Park in the Rockaways. So all the city of Long Beach waste, as well as the South Shore of Nassau County, went to this. Obviously there was no capacity. It was before the barge option got in place. We couldn't get trucks on Long Island because the city of New York was stopping the trucks because they didn't even have enough rails to take out the garbage. And so what you wound up is having literally mountains of garbage there, and ultimately this was shipped mostly to an upstate landfill by barge up the Hudson River at probably 4 or 5 times the cost of normal expenses, okay? All right, a couple of other great pictures. This is aluminum bales, okay? This is what we take them out of the waste stream, we bale them. When the price is right, we send them out, okay? This is bales of newspaper coming out. Okay, this I wanted to show you. You've probably seen these trucks on the Long Island Expressway, right? Those are bales of garbage. Okay, what we do is we bale the garbage, similar to a bale like this, it's a little larger, and then we put them in sleeves of these green bags. And they get wrapped up. So this truck, when it's loaded, it's going to get secured, and they're going to be headed for, like I say, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia. This is a little bit of the Babylon facility. You saw a little bit of the early video from Connecticut. And I want to just talk about some of the differences. And by the way, I have done this, okay? So my job is great because I get from, one day or another I could be in federal court, I could be at the DEC, I could be negotiating with the Teamsters, or if we have something new going on here, what we were doing here actually was trying to see new paper grade being established. So this is kind of what we call a negative sort. This is newspaper, but what's happening here is the final quality control. And no matter how much technology you have, the best still is some human being with eyeballs and hands to say that doesn't belong in there, and they're kicking that out, okay? And so the president of the company and I were actually down here for a couple of hours ourselves, which is, it's great for the workers because they know that you care, but sometimes that real experience to see it and do it. Oh, did I skip a slide? Oh, let me go back. Future of solid waste. That's what I've been talking about, but let's run through this. So I've been saying that, so we have these waste energy facilities that are really the workhorses of residential waste. And by the way, we do get some commercial waste in those facilities, but mostly when they don't have enough residential waste. And the worst thing for those facilities is to shut them off. They don't want to shut them off. It costs them thousands and thousands of dollars to get them started up again. So while that cost, as I said, at a waste energy facility could be the $100, $110, $120 a ton, when they don't have any trash, they'll call up and say, hey, can you bring us some trash? And we'll make it a merchant deal on the spot to bring garbage, which starts to look like the price that it would cost us to ship the waste off on one of those trucks, or even by the limited rail service that we have. Okay, so waste energy facilities, okay, but for the future, I'm not seeing real new technology on waste energy facilities. What we're seeing is certainly the idea that we want less landfilling. Waste energy facilities are really not expanding or being created in a lot of places, but we're seeing emerging technologies like anaerobic digesters, where we're creating biogas, and so we're producing energy out of that gas, some thermal conversion processes, making waste into certain chemical components or chemical compounds, and of course converting food waste, which can be part of the digester process or even in composting. I'm not an engineer, I do a lot of things, so I listen when I hear about these things. There's some ideas to try some of this on Long Island. New York City, who I also told you ships all their waste out, they've had a request for proposals out for a couple of years for somebody to come in and say, what more can we do with this waste? Can we use one of these emerging technologies? Okay, so that's probably an up and coming, still sort of waiting to happen. And by the way, the big part of this again is the science and engineering does exist, but if you see the pilot plants, it's like dealing with it on a 10-ton basis, possibly a 100-ton basis. But when you tell somebody, hey, I got 5,000 tons, what can I do with it? These technologies need to ramp up to be able to do that. But back to my recycling, single stream collection and processing. I mentioned earlier about our project in Brookhaven, the green stream recycling. That's where we can collect the fiber and commingle together. Basically one big container like this, okay, once a week, put all the stuff in there. This means increased recycling participation. Already, you don't have to remember whether it's the Wednesday for paper or the Wednesday for commingle. You just put it all in one place, and then either one of those commodities don't sit around the house for a week. they get put in that container, and every week you just put that container out, okay? So when you see the results of single stream processing systems around the country, there's usually a 10 to 15% increased participation in recycling. It's just easier for people to do it, okay? And they remember, oh yeah, that's easy, just throw that over in there. It's like, oh, I gotta put that in the plastic container, or you have to put it in the paper container. They just do it. It also has the ability to reduce collection and disposal costs, okay? So if I can send one truck around on one day and collect the two items together, then I don't have to send that one truck on this day to get paper and the next day to get containers, all right? So, and collection costs are enormous, right? The collection trucks, collection workers, you'd be surprised that they make very good money. Disposal. Here's an example for the town of Brookhaven. One of the big selling points for single stream in Brookhaven was, because Brookhaven doesn't have a landfill and it doesn't have a waste to energy facility, okay, they're at the possible $105 a ton, and they have to then ship their garbage from their facility in Yaphank to Hempstead. So for every ton they can put back in that recycling container that we will pay them for if they give it to us as Green Stream Recycling, that's an offset of the $105 a ton of sending it to Hempstead. So you can see the economics of that, but you can also see the greenness of that. That's less trucks on the road going both ways. Increased revenues from recyclables. Huge, huge step forward. The technology in single stream is a combination. Now, this is one of the things that's really changed a lot that's made this happen. The technology exists so you can have optical sorters, so you're sorting out the plastics, the glass, different colored glass, different colored plastics. You're doing a really, really good job of creating the best possible paper. And this is a combination of mechanical, magnets, air blades, vacuums, eddy currents, and again, the optical sorters. But still, you never give up on the fact that, so I can possibly reduce the number of pickers and sorters I have to have it, but I still have people on both ends to make sure I'm not sending something into the system that's going to destroy the system. And at the end, I want that best quality material. Added value facilities, just very quickly on that. Added value facilities, this is also the next wave here. So the plastics that get taken out, okay, get shipped out. The fibers that get shipped out. So one of the things we can possibly do when we're constructing these single stream facilities is build added value facilities. So let's take our own plastic, make it into plastic chips, and make new plastic out of it. Business, investment, jobs on Long Island. And I put the rail transload facilities because, again, I think that's another way of the future. Okay, we did that one. Can I just move? Do it again. Okay, so you saw the video. This is just right before that facility in Connecticut was completed. Okay, this is, and why I showed this also is because the amount of space, because of this new technology, is much less space, can do a lot more in less space because of that technology. Now, I'm kind of running out of time, but I just showed this is because some of this information exists even in the Waste Management Reduction Institute works. But I gave you some idea of that relationship to different towns, right? Hempstead and Brookhaven working together, Huntington and Smithtown share a waste energy facility. I just want to know, just very quickly, last item, Babylon. Okay, I've mentioned them a couple of times. So Babylon's the most fascinating town on Long Island with respect to solid waste. It's got it all covered. They have a waste energy facility. They have an ash fill for the waste to energy facility. They have a recycling facility and transfer station, okay, that we operate. They totally control all the residential collection with one company, and they control all the commercial waste with one company. So they've actually entered the marketplace, okay? And so with all due respect to Richard Schaefer, the supervisor of the town, the genius of that is that this is a town that's almost always in the black, because they've taken what was a huge cost in town's budget and turned it into at least even, if not a profit center, but the ability to control those costs. Okay, thank you very much. I think I've kind of run out of time, but I'd love to have some questions if you have any interest. Sure.
I was actually wondering if there's any ongoing existing landfills for resources?
Absolutely there is. It's a great question. So, and I'll divide it into two pieces. One with respect to landfills that have taken whatever over the years, okay? And we have a dozen of those on Long Island, most of which became Superfund sites. And I know that because I'm in some of the litigation on those, because our companies have put waste in them. The problem with the landfill that's taken everything, there's enormous safety public health issue. If you start extracting that, you have no idea what you're going to run to, okay? You get everything from the remains of a dead horse to a barrel of hazardous waste that could explode when you open it, okay? So it sounded like a good idea. They tried it for a little while in Riverhead, and it smelled a lot too. So the community wasn't too happy. On the other hand, from the Asheville side, even though these waste-to-energy facilities have the ability to take waste that's already been pre-processed, you know, most of the waste that's coming to waste-energy facilities, it's after their source separation or after recycling, okay? But there's still that 20% by weight of ash. The resource recovery facilities, I think Covandria and Hempstead has just basically started up a new process to even extract some metals out of the ash that winds up going through the system. Is that right, Frank? Frank Rothel, another garbage person.
That about 3-4 months ago. But the real interest now is to go back to old ash monofills.
Yeah, I was just going to get to that. So now the problem is, so like I mentioned, like Brookhaven has a landfill ashfill, but it's not a monofill. Babylon, on the other hand, has a monofill. It means the only thing that came into that landfill was ash. So as Frank points out, they've been approached, and it could happen that that ash could get remined. Yeah, and it could be mined for the metal, as well as potential other, let's call them construction materials. The seeing Frank reminds me, I didn't mention is, you know, Stony Brook is unique to the fact that we have the boathouse over here that was constructed out of mass burn incinerator ash building blocks. Sorry.
So I kind of have two questions. One is, do you know I know I've heard quite a few times about, I always recycle, but about kind of the benefits of recycling in terms of carbon footprint. Like, what's the trade-off? How much can you say on that? Like, how much energy does it actually take to recycle some of these materials?
That's a great question, and I'm going to say that the short answer is recycle everything. Okay? Because as I was trying to show here, specifically with this new technology, let's back up a second. Look at Long Island. Okay? If I'm not recycling it, I'm either putting it to the waste energy facility at an enormous cost and a potential environmental impact, and I still got the ash to deal with. Or I'm trucking it off of Long Island, and as much as, you know, I'm with companies that do this for thousands of tons every day because there's no place to bring it, it's almost ridiculous to be putting 25 tons of waste on a truck and trucking it to Ohio. Look at the carbon footprint. So to the extent that we had the ability to take more out of that waste through these new technologies, you can just intuitively see that.
And it's becoming more efficient.
Yeah. By the way, and I just want to throw this in, I failed to mention this earlier. So I talked to you about, frankly, most people don't know this, and it's no trade secret because it happens every day. Municipalities know that this is backhauling. It's a fascinating arrangement, okay? So Long Island being an island, there's an enormous amount of flatbed trucks bringing materials to Long Island. Okay? There's less of those trucks because we have this wonderful facility called the Brookhaven Rail Terminal that brings in a lot of building materials. So what we do is we go to those truckers through our trucking company and say, hey, we know you brought that stuff to Long Island. Come to us. We'll give you 25 tons of waste. Take it out to that landfill. So now they're making money on both directions. We do this, by the way, in the other way. The two towns like North Hempstead and Oyster Bay that truck their waste upstate New York, we also, in the wintertime, have another, we're pretty integrated and diversified. We bring salt from upstate. So we take those garbage trucks that are taking garbage up to upstate New York and say, hey, we'll give you a load coming back, bring the salt back. One more point on that is, on the recycling, and this also kind of goes to your question, we also have kind of a backhauling arrangement on recyclables. The majority of our recyclables, certainly paper, go to China. They go to Indonesia, and they go to India, okay? So the backhaul on that is, China sends us a lot of products in those containers. What do? We put paper and recyclables back in those containers and send them the other way. So there's this huge international backhaul.
So really quick, the other part of my question was, should I scrub my sauce glass jars and everything?
You don't have to scrub them.
Okay.
Rinse them out nicely, because by the way, I have to look at the other side of my brain is my wastewater thing. Don't create a lot of wastewater, okay? We have a problem with that on Long Island too. I'm sorry.
So you talk about how single stream is so beneficial, but with a very limited amount of space on Long Island, is there a way that we can take the recycling centers that already exist and retrofit single stream recycling into them?
Absolutely, and so you should know, and I love that question, okay? Because the Brookhaven facility that I talked about, right now, I was there most of it yesterday, we've demolished and taken out most of the old equipment. It's the same building that they were doing commingled and newspaper.
And they have the optical scanner.
Yeah, and we're buying ones that are 10 times better. And so in that same building footprint, and in fact less of a footprint, we'll be able to process more single stream more effectively. We're doing the same thing, so we have commingled separation facilities in Westbury. We're revamping part of that. So for the most part, you're right, that's exactly what will happen. It's kind of hard because, you know, if the town on any given Wednesday is taking 500 to 900 tons a day of recyclables, it's kind of hard to do that while you're under construction, but we're doing it.
So right now, I live in Stony Brook, we're already doing the single stream.
Yes.
But you said it's not commissioned, the facility is not commissioned. Where is this going?
That's a great question. So, first of all, okay, the reason why it would have been the perfect world, but governance and everything is not the perfect world, okay? It would have been the perfect world after we negotiated the contract to build the single stream, create a single stream. The town would have said, we're going to start that in April after you finish the facility. But it was, no, the better idea is to do it now. So that's created a situation where we're taking the material from Yaphank, we're processing it partially in a system we've renovated in Westbury, partial system you saw in Babylon. When I was saying I was on the picking line with that paper, we revamped that system to be able to handle single stream, not nearly as effective as a true single stream facility. And we're taking an enormous amount of that material from Brookhaven and sending it to our plant in Connecticut, which you saw the video. Okay, that's why there's a hard deadline of April, hopefully that Earth Day celebration that says we're turning the machine on and here we can do it.
So, Superstorm Sandy isn't going to be our last superstorm.
Correct.
Well, what's going to happen next time? And what if you have a couple of days in a row? And
So, look, I'm a child of the 60s and I understand, I fight the government every day, but the truth of this is, nobody knows.
yeah.
So we have suggested, from the industry standpoint, that part of the governor's New York Ready, New York Respond, the 2100 Commission, all of that, that should have been part of that agenda. We don't see that happening just yet. But I'm going to tell you right now, the industry, I'm going to continually talk about the reliance on industry, the industry is already thinking about this. So hopefully,
I think most of the collection trucks in Brookhaven run on gas.
Yes,
methane.
compressed natural
You get
gas.
enough from the biogas coming out of the existing landfills to run the trucks?
You probably could.
Yeah.
You probably could.
Maybe
In
a
fact,
nice closed system.
I really appreciate you asking that question, because in our renovation of that Brookhaven facility, we're looking to power the new facility, which is a tremendous power usage. You can think about it, between the pumps and the belts and whatever, to set up something with using the landfill gas to power our facility. That's a great question.
I saw in your pie diagram that you had 6% of the stream is textiles,
Yeah.
and yet none of the commingled waste that's handled in the normal recycling in Brookhaven is clothing or textiles of any type. Is there any plan to incorporate that in the?
It has not been, but I will tell you from the commercial waste stream, where you know those sources are coming, it can be. But it has not been part of the residential. Okay, I think I'm almost running out of time, Mike?
Yeah, all right, so thank you everybody for joining us today. If you'd like to join us for lunch down the hallway, please do. Now you can imagine what our family dinner conversations look like. So thank you again.
Thank you.